Everyone has their own unique career story, and in this episode, I am talking with Sarah Kelsey from the One Up Project, sharing all about her own unique career story and her leadership journey. So I'm going to introduce her and then we're going to jump into the episode. Sarah Kelsey is the founder and host of the One Up Project, a podcast dedicated to simplifying complex topics in personal finance, career growth, and impactful industries. With over 400,000 downloads, Sarah has built a platform that empowers listeners to think critically, challenge the status quo, and take actionable steps towards a more fulfilling life. In this episode, Sarah talks through where she's at in her career to date, some of the big courageous steps that she's made to get to where she is, and her own start to her leadership journey, and some amazing advice and tips on how you can start strengthening your leadership skills so that you can be a leader people actually want to follow, and one that adds a lot of value and builds an amazing, intentional, and value-add career. Let's go. Hello, Sarah. So excited to have you on the Lead with Less podcast. So great to have you here.
Oh, Tash, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to talk about in this episode because you actually gave me the idea for this little series called The Career Stories. So I'm really excited to just see what comes up, see what you have to share. And I know that my audience is going to find it really valuable. So to kick us off, what has your career story been to date and what are you looking to do now? Because I know you're in a bit of a transition phase. So yeah, if you could share that with us, that would be amazing.
Yeah, my career story is an interesting journey because I left high school with a scholarship from PWC to uni. And as a part of the terms of that scholarship, I had to major in either accounting, financial systems, economics, or something else. And at the time, I was, 18, leaving school, and I wasn't reading the T's and C's of a contract, that's for sure. So when I realized that I wanted to major in marketing, I was like, oh, actually, I can't do that. Instead, I ended up majoring in accounting, and definitely the scholarship guided a path for me and came from a family where I was the first in my immediate family to go to university. I was always seen as the academic child, so going through tertiary education was quite important. So it was never not going to be something I went and did. So eventually left university with the Bachelor's of Accounting, and I ended up getting a grad role at PWC off the back of that scholarship. I spent around 10 months there in that time. I realized I was sitting at my desk at 6 p.m. on my birthday in Commercial Bay in Auckland, and I was like, man, I am not that stoked to be here. I was just really upset. I think I cried that day. It had nothing to do with the culture or the people. That was honestly all amazing. What it was that I was working against my strength, and I felt really terrible at my job and really bad about myself. And I'm so glad that I somehow had this self-awareness to realize that. And so I went home and had a conversation with my parents, and I said, this job is working to none of my strengths. I don't feel confident at all. And I think I'm more of a creative person. I don't think the accounting career actually suits my personality. So I left that role 10 months in, which was a big deal in itself because it was this huge opportunity, that I got right out of university, and it was a bit of a sure way to have a really nice, comfortable career path. And then decided to leave that and go back to my university job as a receptionist for 3 months, and in that time work out what I was actually doing with my life. And I'd posted on LinkedIn that I was leaving PwC, made this whole kind of big deal about it. Like the hook of the post was I quit, and then it was a photo of me in front of PwC. It was so dramatic.
They were like, oh my God, I can't believe you would leave a Big Four.
Yeah, it was massive. Like, honestly, ended up getting 250,000 views, had like almost 10,000 likes this post. And it was just caused a big conversation like amongst my circles and wider as well. And I had the CEO of a tech startup reach out to me and said, love your journey, find it so interesting what you're doing, because I'd also started my podcast, the One Up Project, at the start of the year. So I'd been posting about this whole journey and about moving through life and trying to find out who I was and what I wanted to do. And he'd said, do you want to meet up for a coffee? I'd love to talk about job opportunities. And I just explained to him, like, I really wanted to move into marketing. I think would be a lot better suited to me and my skill set. Then went into his company again for an interview. And yeah, he gave me a marketing job on the spot. And so that kind of kicked off my marketing career. And that was my first into that world. So it was a really incredible opportunity. And looking back, I'm so grateful to have been given just the chance to learn new skills and someone having that belief in me despite not having had any experience. Because this is like, I was hired off the back of that LinkedIn post purely. I never gave my CV. All it was a conversation and a LinkedIn post. Didn't even know what I'd studied, or there was no conversation about anything like that. So very unconventional. And then from there, I just continued my career in marketing, moved on to an agency, which allowed me to work remote. And I traveled a couple of times, and that also led to the last year of my life, which has been living the digital nomad dream, working and traveling across sort of Europe. And now I've got my feet planted in London. I will not be moving for the next 2 years. And so now my next transition is I'm on the job hunt and looking for a product marketing role in a really purpose-led company. So yeah, it's a whole new world.
Oh, that's so amazing and so interesting. And I really want to just point out one piece that you said there around, I'm really grateful that I was given the chance. And I'm so glad you didn't say luck, that I was lucky, because you created the chance by being brave and sharing what you did, which was I'm quitting this quote unquote lucrative opportunity, which is
Mm,
PWC. But you were brave in the sense of sharing that decision, and that you were about to just embark on this next experience of, I don't really know what I'm doing. I know this is like what I want to step into, but I don't know what that's going to look like. And I think that's the really key part, is we create our chances by being willing to put ourselves out there and being willing to share that vulnerable stuff, right? Oh my gosh, I got this amazing
mm,
opportunity. I got this amazing job that will eventually pay me to the point of getting to partner and getting millions of dollars a year or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? It actually just isn't working for me. It's not what I want to do. And also really
mm,
love the other piece that you spoke about, really that self-awareness of this doesn't play to my strengths, and finding that link between that is actually causing me not to feel as confident, not to feel as, what's the word, like that I enjoy my job, that I feel confident, that I feel like I can really stretch myself because it's not aligned with the things that you really enjoy doing. And that brings you joy, and brings you energy, and feels
mm,
easy to do. And I think that's what a lot of people skip. Like they don't connect that piece of, why am I consistently feeling this tension? Why am I consistently feeling this
mm,
resistance to my job or to the work that I'm doing? Is it that I'm just not good enough? Or is it actually this just doesn't align with anything that I enjoy doing, or anything that comes more naturally to me? And that is
mm,
such an amazing piece that you actually be able to pinpoint that and go, okay, what are my strengths, and what job would allow me to really utilize that? And this is going to come into leadership in a second, but I just really wanted to point that out, because I think those two things are just so important and so powerful in your journey.
I appreciate that so much. And I think looking back, the thing that allowed me to have that clarity, because I was 21 at the time of making that choice, was I had started the podcast and that had seen a lot of growth. And it was something outside of my stock standard 9 to 5 that made me realize I was good at other things. So I actually had something else in my life that I cared about, that was a hobby or that was a passion, that gave me the evidence that, oh no, I actually do have value. I actually can contribute something of worth to the world. And like accounting isn't the be all and end all. And I think especially when you're put in these environments where you are given these incredible opportunities, you can feel like this is the best opportunity I'm ever going to get to contribute. So I better take it. And I would always say to people, like, it's not that it's not a good opportunity, it's that it's not the right one for me. And it's okay that I find a different one. So yeah, no, I'm really glad I had that experience.
Yeah, and I always say to people as well, it's like we make the best decision we can at the time with what we know. So
Mm,
it's at the time that you got that scholarship and you went and did that degree, that was the best decision at the time based on what you knew and based
yeah.
on what was available to you. And then when you started One Up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's this like whole other thing and that's actually working. You then had that new information. You then got new information that you could then go, oh, what is the next best decision? And that also comes back to that allowing ourselves permission to change our mind, that it's like, it's actually okay that this decision I made 3 years ago when I was a baby, because let's face it, when we're 18, we have no idea anything about anything.
Yeah.
And now I've got 3 more years or even 4 more years at that point of insight, of understanding to go, what is the next best decision? And then just allowing
Mm,
ourselves to play that game rather than, oh my God, I have to make the right decision. It's actually, no, it's just what's the next best decision based on what I know, what I have, and what I'm hoping to get or wanting
Mm,
to create. One of the things that we really wanted to talk about in this episode was your relationship with leadership and your perspective on leadership and what that looks like for this next step in your career. So, to kick that
mm.
off, what is your view of leadership? What's your philosophy? What's your approach? What's your leadership stance?
We spoke about this on my episode as well with you, Tash, but we both enjoy the work of Simon Sinek, and he always talks about how leadership doesn't just happen at the top, it happens at all levels, and you can be a leader no matter where you sit in a company. And so I've always viewed leadership as something that was accessible to me and something I could practice and something I could be involved with, even early in my career, all the way up until now. And I've had some really incredible mentors along the way, like great leaders who are just excellent people and really strong examples of what it means to make people better versions of themselves just through their presence. And one mentor who really influenced a lot of who I am and who I became, he would always say to me that people always want to feel seen, heard, and understood, I think were the three things. And so that's how I view leadership, is that leadership makes people feel heard, seen, and understood. And there are a couple ways you can go about that. And I think both curiosity and empathy play a huge role in that. But yeah, my view of leadership is someone who can sit with each individual and make them feel seen, heard, and understood in a way that helps them be a better version of themselves or the other people around them.
Mm. Oh, Simon Sinek.
So,
He's
yeah,
definitely my leadership boyfriend, that's for sure.
well, I
Yeah, I
love that.
I love that. Feel seen, heard, and understood. Absolute. Like that is at the core, right? And that comes back to our sense of belonging. When people feel seen, heard, and understood, we find that sense of belonging. We feel like we matter. We feel like we fit there. We feel like we have a space. And yeah, if we can create that through our actions, through the way that we show up, through the way that we bring out the best in other people, that is absolutely the best thing that we can do. Given the what leadership is to you, what are the key leadership skills that you believe you need to develop the most in order to be the leader that you want to be, to bring that view of leadership to life?
I think so much of it starts with curiosity. And I'm going to be really biased because I always talk about curiosity. And I think because it's been so central to just my development as a person. But I think so many good things start when you're curious, like your ability to empathize, your ability to understand, your ability to learn and to grow as a person will always start with some kind of curiosity. And a core trait of who I'd see as the strongest leaders are those that have a very curated and intentional use of curiosity in what they do. They're not looking to be right. They're not looking to have all the answers. They're just looking to be curious people who are there to ask the right questions. And everything they do is to get to a place where they're asking a better question. So, yeah, I think lots of things branch off that, but curiosity being a core fundamental part.
Absolutely. You said curated curiosity. Can you
Mm.
explain that a little bit more?
I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually, because I've been applying for jobs. And so I've been having to go through what I think my skills are, which is, of course, always a really torturous activity, having to try and talk really highly of yourself. But it's such a great thing to learn how to do, how to just speak confidently about what you can bring to a team and how you can contribute. And so I've been doing that work for myself. And I've been thinking a lot about curiosity because it's something that I always try to bring to a room. And it's something that I find really important in other people as well. But I was thinking, is my curiosity something that is innate or has it been trained? And like, how can other people be more curious? And I thought it's actually a combination of both. I think as humans, we all have this innate curiosity. That's how we learn to do anything or walk or ask questions. We're all born these curious creatures that go and learn how to do things and we grow and evolve as people. But I think you can also harness that innate ability you have. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you can craft the way that your curiosity thrives. Like you actually have some influence and control over how you use that curiosity in your life, where you use it. And not enough of us practice it in an intentional way. Like, I think a good example of that is just when you feel judgmental about anything, like you could be walking through the street and you see someone and you make an instant judgment of who they are based on what they're doing, what they're wearing, anything like that. And I think that's a moment where you can train yourself to be curious instead of judging, to ask why or to consider all the different possibilities. And so I think curated curiosity is when you really take a view of intentionality around how you view the world and how you have different perspectives on things.
I love that. And I couldn't agree more with what you said around we really are born curious creatures because I've got a 2.5-year-old, almost 3-year-old son, and we've just
Yeah.
started the why phase. Why? And I'm like,
Oh,
wow, I do not know anything about anything. Like, because he'd be like, why? And I'm like, I actually don't know the answer to that.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
Google, I don't actually know how
Yeah.
to answer this question. And then unfortunately, in a lot of cases, and for a lot of people, that gets drilled out of us as we get older, as we go to
Mm.
school, all of those things of
Yeah,
like, stop
so
asking
true.
why just because I said so. And like, Carl and I are trying to be really intentional with, okay, how can we explain this? Or how can we figure it out together? Or what do you think?
Mm.
Like, why do you think that works that way? To really, as you say,
Mm.
curate that curiosity because it's definitely something we're all born with. It's just how much it's been silenced over time. And this also is hugely
So true.
impacted by the environments that we're in. For those listening here, they're likely employees working in organizations. So really thinking about how does my environment curate my curiosity? Do I work in an environment
Mm.
where I'm encouraged to ask lots of questions, that I can really explore things and do things differently? Because that is going to play into how much you flex that curiosity muscle as well. And I couldn't agree more that it is one of the most fundamental skills because it also reduces assumption making, which we are very good at doing. As humans, we are very good at making assumptions when we don't have the whole story. And that's when we start making judgments, all of those things. So, yeah, if we can flex that muscle, that is so important. And I really love the judgment piece in particular, because this is something that my husband and I have been talking a lot about recently is how much our judgment actually impacts our sense of abundance, our sense of joy, our sense
Mm.
of contentment in life, because whether we think it or not, when we judge other people, we're also judging ourselves. And that
So
creates a kink in our flow of life. And so, yeah, how can
Mm.
we bring curiosity of, oh, I wonder why that's happening, or I wonder why they would make that choice, or that's an interesting choice, or even if it's I wouldn't do that, it's like, okay, why wouldn't I do that? So instead of I wouldn't do that,
Mm.
why wouldn't I do that? That's interesting. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable sometimes because we actually have to
Yeah.
acknowledge that we're not curious. We have to acknowledge that we're actually judging in that moment. But it opens up so much opportunity to shape our perspectives or even question our beliefs, which is such a big part of leadership too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, huge. And I think you're familiar with the work of Brene Brown, and she talks a lot about shame. And I definitely think shame is a huge part of that reason why we stop asking why as well, because we don't want to ask dumb questions. And that in school all the time, like some kid raises their hand and another kid is, wow, how do you not know that? And I've even had experiences like that into adulthood where I'll ask a question and someone, oh, do you not know the answer? And I'm like, no, don't make me feel
That's
bad
why I'm
about
asking. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, it's just I think when you have an awareness of that as well, you would never question why someone would ask a question. And like, I applaud and I champion people who are willing to put themselves out there to ask questions, basic or complex, because you really are putting yourself on the line a lot of the time. And it's very vulnerable to take that chance. And you're exposing your insecurities means that you are being a naturally curious person because you're open to change and you're open to things adapting. When you're an insecure person, you're closed to change. So you're instantly not going to be a very curious person. So I think like all of those things wrap up together. And in the sense of leadership, that's why secure versus insecure leaders, I think, is a really important topic because that's going to dictate how curious your leader is and therefore how willing they are to learn and be open to change, which is a huge part of good leadership if someone is wanting to evolve or if someone has a growth mindset, etc.
The shame is that's a whole topic we could go down the
Yeah.
rabbit hole with, but it's such an important one to even just start wanting to learn about. And Brené Brown talks about her Dare to Lead book as well. So that's a good reference point for people. But I also wanted to find out from you, what are the biggest challenges that you're experiencing on your leadership journey and how are you navigating them? Because I know that you're wanting to step into a product manager role. So, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing right now or that you anticipate and how are you navigating them?
I think a lot of my challenges right now are like very boring practical challenges. For example, for the last couple of years, actually, I've worked fully remote. And I feel like a big part of leadership is quite personal. And it's hard to make those personal connections with people when you're distanced via technology. And I think naturally that's also just a part of my personality because I'm someone I love in person interaction of any kind versus being online. So I think that's been a hard part to evolve those skills because I'm not being able to read body language or like have the same learning in a conversation that I would when I'm in person. So changing that up completely is 100% my intention. I want to be in person, in office. I don't care if it's 5 days a week. I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to have the commute because for me, building those skills in person is going to speed up the rate of change. And it's also going to make me a whole lot more effective. And then also just moving into a new career job landscape as well and working out like where I fit in like the hierarchy of roles now because my skill set is something I'm now trying to translate into almost what feels like a different language because yes, England has its similarities to New Zealand, but we're talking about a whole different economy, a whole different job landscape. Like things are so much more specialized over here compared to New Zealand. It's so much more generalist. So where I tend to sit in terms of the work I can do and the leadership role I can take on, yeah, it's different. So I'm trying to work out where I'm best placed, but also make sure that I'm communicating my abilities as a leader. It doesn't need to mean I'm actually leading a team, but I'm positioning those in a way that show that I do have those skills and I'm ready to bring those to a team.
I'm interrupting this episode to let you know that VIP Leaders, my leadership development program, is currently open for enrollment. VIP Leaders is my signature program that helps you strengthen your leadership identity, build trusted influence, and level up your emotional intelligence to become a leader people actually want to follow. The next round is starting very soon in June 2025. So if you are interested in leveling up your leadership skills, giving you everything that you need to be a leader people actually want to follow, head down into the show notes and click VIP Leaders to find out more. And if you've got questions, reach out and let me know. All right, let's head back to the episode. Two huge challenges for sure. And I guess like how are you working through that, translating your skill set and your value? Because as you say, and this is going to apply a lot for people who are wanting to do career pivots and things like that, or wanting to move into different industries, because we can get stuck in this mentality of, but this is my experience. This is all I have. And I can't change to that career, or I can't take that next step because I haven't done it before. I don't have that experience. Yeah, the only way we're going to get that experience, right, is by making the chance to do it. And that's such a big part of that is being able to actually start learning how to articulate and, as you were saying, like translate into a different way. So what are some of the practical kind of tips or actions you're doing that could be helpful for other people in learning how to translate and speak a different language?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a good question. I think all of my learning starts through conversation. Like I have a podcast, so naturally that's how it works. But when I am trying to navigate a new space right now, I'm doing a mini career pivot in terms of the work, but big career pivot in terms of the place and the landscape. So for me, as soon as my feet are on the ground, I'm getting perspectives. I'm reaching out to people that have the roles that I want or the skills that I want. And it's not even about getting a job for me. It's really about just getting a perspective first and foremost. What does my skill set look like in this industry? What do you do? What do you bring to a team? Really just trying to build up my view of what's around me and how I fit into that, but also what's missing from that and what I could bring to that. And yeah, really just trying to get an idea through other people's perspectives, what things look like. Because the other thing is that lots of people have, or everyone has a different perspective. You know, you can't just trust one person's view of an industry. You really have to try and diversify the perspectives you're getting and use that to paint a picture of where you should be heading. So once I got those perspectives, I realized that a CV wasn't actually going to cut it in terms of the things that I've worked on, the skills that I have, and how I could really display my value, because it's so much more than just words. A lot of the things I've done really need to be a demonstration and a flow and a process. So I thought, okay, how can I display this? So I ended up creating like a Notion portfolio, which is just like any kind of Notion doc that you would start if you've used Notion before. And I found a template, like a free template, just a portfolio one, and adapted that to me and broke it down into 3 sort of different sections where I had a different project for each section that represented the type of skill set that I was really wanting to use in my next role. The reason that I say that distinction is because I have other skills that were maybe more prominent, or I had more to talk about, but they might have been the obvious skills represented in this portfolio, but they weren't actually the skills that I wanted to use in my next role. I wanted to build on this area instead. So I doubled down on that, trying to reflect like what I could bring to a next role and put me in a position where if someone looked at my portfolio, they'll be like, oh, product marketing manager, that's what she would be, because that's the kind of role that I wanted. Or at least they would be able to see that I had these skill sets that I could bring to a team. And if they needed that, they would instantly be able to click as to how I would work with their company. I wanted it to be really obvious, the contribution I can make straight away. And I wanted it to be really obvious where I was most valuable, and yeah, just be super clear about that. So the portfolio has been a huge, huge help because I've had a lot of positive feedback on it, and it's definitely helped translate those skill sets in a way that's quick and easy to consume. And it's also visual. So it's interesting to read and interesting to look at, because at the end of the day, like, people are still people and they don't want to be bored out of their mind reading just another CV. So I think if you can stand out and you can like almost manipulate the view of your career in a way to suit what you want to do, then yeah, I think that's a really useful strategic way to get what you want ultimately. And like, I just stopped also feeling like I had to fit myself into a certain box because I'd done X role in the past. I just started to pick and choose the skills that I wanted and put together my own version of who I was, and not let any kind of previous career or role dictate the next box I would fit into. And it's just been this mindset shift where I'm like, oh yeah, like I can choose who I am. Like, I don't have to fit into someone else's version of what it looks like to be a marketing manager or in a product team or whatever. Like, I actually can choose how I am reflected to the rest of the world. So yeah, I think doing that has been a huge help.
Oh, I love those so much. In particular, the perspectives one, because this comes back to your point about curiosity. You immediately use that curiosity skill of what is happening on the ground here? What is happening in the real world? What are people experiencing? What are they looking for? And also, what language are they using, which you can then use in your portfolio and in your applications and when you interview. You're learning through immersion. So by getting those perspectives, because you're like, oh, okay, so this is actually what's happening day to day versus this is what I think is happening, or this is what I
Mm,
assume is happening. You're using that curiosity skill to really find out what is the reality and how do I play into that reality? How do I make that work for me? And through that curiosity, you realize actually a 2-page black and white CV isn't actually going to help me stand out. It isn't going to make me notice. So, what is that going to look like? What is within my control to be as representable as possible or be as noticed as possible? And I particularly love what you said around, I could probably even connect to the word you used earlier, curated. Like, you're intentionally curating the job that you want based on the skills that you want to use. And I think this actually really applies to leadership too. So many people just step into leadership if we're talking about formal, like people leadership or formal people management, because it's the next step, or they just become who they think they should be. Whereas, what are the strengths and the skills that I really love using, or I really want to expand in this next step? And how can I make those front and center so that I can actually create that job for myself, or I can be more intentional about the jobs that I am looking for, and also being more intentional about the questions I'm asking as part of those interviews.
mm,
And it just gives you so much control. And I actually have a choice in what next
Mm.
step I want to take versus I just have to take this next step because that's just the traditional next step. And I think we're also in one of the best times that we can do this because a lot of companies are starting to be more flexible to this because if we can really advocate for actually these strengths of mine are going to enable you to do this and this, or it's going to enable this team to do this and this, or it's going to contribute to the team in this and this way, they're like, wow, I hadn't actually thought of it that way. That is actually what we need
Mm.
versus what we thought we needed because of just what the last person had. So really love those
Exactly.
points that you talked about because I think in our careers, we can tend to be too passive. Oh, I'll just go
Mm.
with whatever the pathway is, or I'll just be this because that's what's necessary for me to be successful, or that's what the last person had. And you've really
Yeah.
explained like how we can be really intentional and active in the way that we create our career and take that next step. And I also loved what you said around even if I'm not going into a formal leadership role, this is actually my leadership skills that I bring. And this kind of, again, comes full circle to what you said at the beginning. And leadership isn't a position. It's the way that we show up. It's the way that we're doing things. It's the way that we're interconnecting with the people around us and the way that we're contributing to the team.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I appreciate you highlighting all of those things. And I think something I want to echo from what I also said is that it's important not to let your job history dictate like who you are now. Like you actually get to choose who you are now or like what role you want next and like how you present as a person looking for the next role. You are not your job history. You are who you decide to be in this moment, and you can pick and choose which elements of that role you bring to your next step. And that's something I feel like I've only really just clicked. I'm like, oh wow, I can actually design this in a way that is still 100% true, still 100% authentic, but it's just a lot more strategic.
Yeah, good point in shouting that out again, because this also comes back to if we're honing back into leadership specifically, this is actually a really important part of the leadership journey because so often we allow our history with leadership to dictate who we then become as leaders because we either try and
Mm.
emulate the leaders that we like. It's, oh, I want to be Simon Sinek or I want to be this person. And or it's, I absolutely don't want to be this person. It's, I don't want to be Jeff Bezos or I don't want to be this, that, and the other thing. And neither of those are actually super healthy because then we overcompensate and we become either the exact opposite or we completely lose ourselves in trying to mimic. And one of the things that I
Mhm.
always do with my clients is we do leadership identity work first. It's what's all the baggage you're carrying from the past? What is useful? What are we going to keep in our carry on? And what do we actually need to just
Mm.
get rid of? What we need to just say goodbye to, let go, and then really intentionally articulate who is it that I want to be now? Who is it that I want to be now? And this leadership experience that I want to create from here. And this goes exactly to your point around you are not your career history and you're not your leadership history either. If you've had shitty managers, if you've had terrible work experiences, if you've had toxic experiences, they will form part of how you see and perceive a lot of things, but they don't have to define who you are and dictate what comes next and that decision next. And I think that's such an important piece for people to think about is our past can become a defining factor if that's what we want it to be. Or it can just be
Yeah.
information that we use to then decide what comes next or what we want to do next. And I think that's, again, it's about how do I use all of that to be an active creator of my experience going forward versus being a passive liver of that experience.
Wow, that's such an important point. It reminds me of this episode of the show about the NBA, and it was I don't know what it's called now, but it's like a kind of a docu-series on the NBA and all the teams. And I was watching it, and Jason Tatum, who's an NBA player in the Celtics, I think, he was getting all this criticism from the media because he wasn't aggressive enough in his gameplay. And so they were like, this is why the team's not going to get to the final because he won't step up and take charge and be that aggressive leader that they need and, be more aggressive on court. And anyway, they ended up getting to the semifinals or the finals, which is a huge deal. And it wasn't because he changed his style to fit what the media said he needed to do or what anyone else said he needed to do. It was because he adapted the unique strengths and skills he already had to be the best version of himself, be the best player. And he knew that. He knew himself well enough to not listen to those critics and to just double down on who he was. And I think that was really inspiring for me in the context of leadership and just general life, that you don't have to be or not have to be any particular person. You just really need to double down on the best version of who you can be. And that will ultimately bring the best results, I think.
Absolutely. And Brené Brown says it, who you are is how you lead. So it's like the more aware you are of who you are and how you want to show up and what your values are and your skills and your strengths and the characteristics and the traits that you want to embody as a leader, that is going to be the way that you lead. And we have to be careful about who we listen to and let influence that, and making sure that whoever we are listening to are people with valid positions to actually be able to say that. Like media critics, I'm like, mate, you're
Yeah.
sitting behind a camera trying to get views. You don't know what's actually needed to help an NBA team get to the finals. So your opinion actually doesn't hold enough weight here. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I always love to kind of leave with some practical tips. And I know we've shared some practical tips throughout already, which I know people are going to take a lot away from. But are there any final top suggestions or pieces of advice that you would give to those who are starting their leadership journey or might be on it and are really wanting to stretch themselves, whether that's leadership as in stepping into a people leadership role or just leadership as in wanting to lead their life more intentionally or to lead their life better?
Honestly, I will always come back to curiosity. And so with curiosity, to make it more practical, I would think about what is the most accessible way for you to gain a diverse range of perspectives on the particular area that you're wanting to change or that you're wanting to upskill in. If it's leadership within the company you're already in, I would take the time to have as many intentional conversations with people in the company who have a leadership style that you respect or that you admire, obviously not to emulate them, but to get their perspective on what it means to be a leader or what it means to pivot in your career or whatever it is you're interested in. Um, and I would take the time to sit and listen and have some good questions for them, like thoughtful questions around that, because those perspectives, it's not that straight away they'll give you something to action or now they know you want to get into leadership, so they'll give you that opportunity. But what it will give you is like little breadcrumbs that you can take away and just think about, ponder on for the next couple of weeks or even next couple of months, because you'll come back to that over time. And then that's when you find opportunities because you've taken the chance to be curious, to think about it. Now suddenly you're noticing more things of where you could step up or where you could contribute or where you could change just a little bit. And each of those moments is going to get you closer and closer to where you want to be. So I think everything starts at the root of curiosity. Also, sometimes it involves taking a little bit of risk as well. It might be putting yourself out there, it might be being a little bit more vulnerable than you typically would be. And I think finding those ways to safely and accessibly take risk in a way that is meaningful to you, because risk isn't always going to be comfortable and you will have to step out of your comfort zone. That's just like a natural part of it. But to find a way in which that actually makes a meaningful impact and contribution to you, I think is really important. And if you can find a mentor in some respect, whether it's someone at your work or a coach or someone who you just admire within your life, find someone who you're okay with being vulnerable and open about these things with. Because I think half the battle sometimes is we try and do these things on our own and then pop out this new and improved and evolved version of ourselves, having done it all by ourselves. But if there's anything I've learned over the last year, it's that people will speed up your journey to growth times 10 in ways that you didn't even expect. And it will strengthen your relationships as well. So yeah, I think those would be my overarching thoughts.
Yeah, those are amazing. And you made them really practical. So thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more around getting a mentor or a coach, or just coming back to your points earlier of just having curious conversations around just meeting people and just for the sense of like understanding who they are and what they know. And people want to help. People really
Mm,
do want to help other people. Something I get all the time is, oh, I don't want to be annoying and I don't want to waste their time. It's like people can decide for themselves. It's people can
exactly.
decide if they have the time to help you or not. but you need to be willing to ask the question. And that's, for a lot of people, that's actually very risky. It's like putting themselves out there and potentially getting a no. This is something that my husband said to me that has always stuck with me. It's like, if you never ask the question, the answer is already no. They're just not saying it to your face.
Yeah.
It's already no. So you may as well
Yeah.
ask the question, and there's a 50% chance it's going to be a yes. And that's 50% more chance that you're going to get what you want or get closer to it. And I think just adding on to that, with that curiosity piece, it's something that's also very important is, if we're wanting help from people, be really focused on the value first, not, I want to have this conversation because I want you to give me something, as in I want you to give me a job or I want you to give me
Yeah.
an opportunity. It's just go in for the pure purpose of, I really want to just learn. I just want to learn what you have to share, and then I can decide what comes from that, and then whatever comes from it. And that may not be immediate. It may be 3 months down the track. It may be a year from now. But just, yeah, be curious without attachment. Be curious, just genuinely just wanting to give and get value. I think that's the only other thing I would add to that.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Like, service first mindset always, if you can. And I think the other thing is, I always reached out to people when I was younger to catch up. Even now I still do, but catch up with coffees and stuff like that. And people would say, yeah, but what can I give that person? Like, how can I add value or be service first when I don't have anything to give? And I think, first of all, your active listening and curiosity is one thing, like respect for someone's time and like their expertise and admiration of their own journey is one thing. But also, sometimes you can't give anything at that time, but just the acknowledgement of thanking that person for their time and asking, if not now, but in the future, there is any way in which I can help you, and thank you for the time that you've given me, then please let me know. I would love to do that, because I think even just that in itself is a real representation of who you are as a person. And especially when you're younger, I think that goes a long way.
And also, don't make an assumption that you don't have anything to give just because you're young, just because you're new, because so often people who have no experience, who are completely new or young, actually add a lot of value, because their questions are questions that those people may not have heard for a long time or have may not been asked
So
before.
true.
And so never make assumptions about what we can and can't do for people. And just being, again, it's just go in there from a place of valuing someone's time, being curious. And
Yeah.
so often people are like, oh my God, I just got to spend an hour talking about myself. Like, that just made my day. And wow, I just
Yes,
was so
so true.
energized. And like, oh my God, I actually just fell in love with my job again because I spoke about it to someone new. You have no idea what
Yeah.
that could even do for someone. So be careful about the assumptions you make if you don't have, quote unquote, the experience or what you perceive to be the value, because that's not a decision we get to make. That's for other people to decide. So
That is
yeah.
so true. Couldn't agree more.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing conversation. There's so many rabbit holes that I think we could go down and talk about, but we're going to end this here. I do some quick fire questions. So I think we've got maybe 2 minutes. So you got to be super quick fire here with these answers. What is the best advice you've ever received that helped you be a great leader?
It would be from my mentor that I mentioned earlier. All people want is to feel seen, heard, and understood.
Amazing. What is the one thing that helps you feel courageous to do scary things?
Oh, this is a great question. What helps make me feel courageous? Oh, sorry, this is not quick fire. I feel like having good people around you who will support you whether you fail or succeed. Like, I think building strong relationships gives me that power. Yeah.
Love that one, having that support system. And what is one boundary that you uphold that supports you to be your best?
Finding the balance between my extroverted and introverted self, because I try and make sure that I am always the best, most present, active listener when I'm in a conversation. But when you're doing that, it takes a lot of energy. So it's important to also refresh and re-energize so that you can be just as sharp for the next person you're talking to.
That's such an important one, because we all are a little bit introverted and extroverted. So yeah, really understanding that. Beautiful. So I love this conversation with you, Sarah. It's just been so amazing. Where can people find you to connect with you?
Oh, firstly, thank you so much, Tash, for your time. I've loved this conversation as well. If anyone wants to listen to the podcast, it's the One Up Project on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok at the One Up Project. So yeah, if you have any more questions, always happy to answer and to connect as well.
Beautiful. And we'll add all of those links into the show notes as well. So you can find Sarah and connect with her. And as always, please let us know what you thought about the episode. We always love to hear feedback. And if you have any topics or ideas for more episodes, please let me know as well. And we'll be back again in your ears next week. Bye, Sarah.
See you later. Thanks so much.
Hey, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening to Lead With Less. It means the world to me if you could take a moment to leave a rating and a review on Apple, or just rate with 5 stars on Spotify. It means a lot to the growth and the expansion of the podcast. And if you know any other people leaders who could do with a dose of inspiration to level up their leadership skills, then please forward on this podcast to them. I would really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any feedback or have any thoughts, please message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or email. I'd love to hear from you.